everybody. Welcome to another edition of This Week in Cleantech. Another day, another dollar, another Friday, another 15-minute-ish roundup of the biggest stories in climate and clean energy every week. This is being recorded for Friday, February 27th, 2026. We're recording it on a Thursday in case anything crazy happens in the interim. Don't blame us. If you don't know my face and voice by now, I'm Factor This content director, Paul Gerke, joined as always by Cleantech commentator Mike Casey of Tigercomm. We also have a recurring guest on the show. I think it lends some validity to the program when people are willing to come back and have another conversation with us, Mike. So bravo to us for that. Elizabeth Weise from USA Today is in our lobby waiting to join us. We'll get to her in just a moment. In the meantime, Mike, how are we?
I'm good, friend. I must tell our listeners that Brian Mendez was cracking himself up before the show started. It was
Producer
quite
Brian
impressive.
Loves a good laugh, man. He's a funny guy.
And none better than those he supplies to himself. But anyway, we like to give two listener shout-outs. David Levesque, program coordinator at Solar Austin, and Nasikul Islam, director of technology, engineering, and ventures at Exceed Geoenergy. Talked to both those guys yesterday. They said they really liked the show. I'm like, good, you're getting a listener shout-out. So they're stuck with them.
Mike Casey's like, let me bust out this Word document. I'm putting you in the script for tomorrow. I'm reading your names, darn it. No, seriously, shout out to both of you. Thank you so much for sharing some feedback with us. We love to hear from the viewers, the listeners of the program. We want to make you a part of the show as much as possible. So if you've got a story or an opinion you want to see covered or 2 cents to spare, just email us. The new email address is twictwick@tigercomm with 2 M's.us. As always, we've got 5 of the biggest stories in clean energy and technology this week to talk about. Let's start with number 1, since that's the first number chronologically. Mike, get us started.
I was going to say that I was going to lie and say none of this is scripted, but that would be obvious because of the words I'm about to read. Our first story is by our very own Paul Gerke.
What? Cool. I actually didn't even know that I was in the show once again. I love to be surprised.
Data centers done right. Xcel and Form Energy team up to power Google operation Minnesota. Folks, I want to be clear. Paul Gerke is forcing 2 stories into this lineup, and I will declare both of them. This is one of them because he needs some clicks, so give him some clicks. Paul Gerke, talk about your own story.
That's not true because I didn't even send you this one. You found it organically, and it actually means something to me. So credit where credit's due here. There are times I send you a story, and I'm like, hey, this is pretty good. Put it in the show. This wasn't one of those times, but this is a super important story, and I'm glad that you saw that because it was one of those times where, like, not to brag, but like my instincts were kind of right on this. I saw this press release come down from Xcel, and the headline was whatever. It's like Xcel and Google are building a data center. Yeah, okay. And I've got 10 fingers, right? But then when I read it, there were some really interesting clauses in there about exactly how they were going to do this and how it was going to benefit Minnesota and the community at large. And I was like, this feels an awful lot like data centers done right. And I kind of sent it to our content team chat, and it just lingered there for a couple hours in the afternoon. And then I was scrolling LinkedIn, and I saw that former Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm was actually posting about the project. And she was like, this is such a great concept for reasons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I was like, that is right. And that is exactly what I thought when I read it, but I needed Jennifer Granholm to tell me that the instincts were sharp enough, and then we launched the article. So if you haven't seen this yet, this is about Minnesota utility Xcel Energy. They just announced that they're going to power a new Google data center out in Pine Island, Minnesota. Super small town, like 4,000 people, literally pine trees everywhere. And the local opposition has been fierce to this. The people generally don't want it, as is the case with a lot of small towns that end up with one of these hyperscalers trying to set up shop. It needs approval from the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission still, but that's going to happen because of all the positive things that this does for Minnesota. That includes everything from new clean energy projects to ratepayer protections. So under this deal and pursuant to Minnesota law now, Google is going to cover 100% of the costs for that new electric service and all related grid upgrades to Xcel's system. And they're going to bring 1,900 megawatts, 1.9 gigawatts of new clean generation online. And that includes a cool as hell 300 megawatt iron air battery from Form Energy. Form Energy, we've been talking about for a while, one of those new battery companies that has long duration storage, 100 hours, the longest storage system of any battery in the entire world, Mike Casey, is going to this data center project. Supposed to enable all sorts of things for the community there and help Minnesota meet its clean energy goals ahead of schedule. If you don't know, they're supposed to be carbon free 100% by 2040. This is one of those things where like the fine details seem to support this project in ways that a lot of the other data center ones feel like, sort of vulture situations. Mike, what did you think about this?
I think that in reporting that surely to earn you the Pulitzer Prize, Paul Gerke, Patty Acomb has warned that data centers can use as much electricity as a small city, so states need strong protections for ratepayers that doesn't lose sight of clean energy goals. And as we noted, Secretary Granholm said Pine Island deal is a model for how data center siting should be done. All right, Paul, we need to get going on story number 2, friend.
Sorry, this is what happens when you let me talk about myself. Second story, Aman Tripathi at Interesting Engineering. This one caught my eye because it's a Mike Casey story. U.S. particle accelerators turn nuclear waste into electricity, cutting radioactive life by 99.7%. Isn't this one of your scruples about nuclear, Mike?
Yeah, so this would be the second story that one could suspect that Paul Gerke pushed. I want to come clean. The first one was our idea, not his, because it is his birthday, and we wanted to give him some credit once a year.
My birthday's in August.
Just go with it. Just go with it, man. Go with it. Okay. Researchers at DOE's Thomas Jefferson National Accelerator Facility are advancing accelerator-driven systems, or ADS, which transmute nuclear waste into safer forms, and in the process, create heat that can be used to generate zero-carbon electricity. If paired with partitioning and recycling, the process could cut nuclear waste dangerous lifespan from 100,000 years down to 300 years. That's a 99% reduction.
One Mike Casey lifetime. 300 years, give or take.
I wish, friend. So I will say I've been a nuclear skeptic, not a nuclear hater. Waste is the problem. I would point out that 300 years is a long time for a group of humans to rationally and responsibly manage a resource. Hasn't happened a lot in human history, but Paul Gerke, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to make this economically viable, there's got to be some work done here. Researchers are trying to improve the accelerator efficiency, redesigning some key components so they can run at warmer temperatures, which would cut down on the extensive cooling costs for this technology. The team is also working to make it more efficient in other ways. They're partnering with companies like Radiabeam, General Atomics, Stellant Systems, Jefferson Lab, ensuring ADS can move from lab-scale research to commercial deployment with this. You raise valid points, Mike, but I love the idea and I love the ingenuity in this. This is what the AI age is supposed to bring us, right?
Yes.
Story number 3.
Yusuf Khan, Wall Street Journal, clean energy manufacturers set to muddle through fresh tariff turmoil. Paul Gerke.
Oh, what a mess, Mike. Clean energy manufacturers facing new uncertainty after the Supreme Court said, you know what, all those emergency power tariffs, yeah, you were right, those are BS. They said they're unlawful, and then Trump in response was like, well, hell, I'll put 10% on the whole globe. That went into effect on Tuesday. I think it's been bumped to 15. Nobody really knows what's going on or where the money goes or how you might get it back. Analysts say that back and forth on tariffs is really endangering investment in U.S. cleantech, and I can say firsthand as a reporter, I've reported on those exact concerns. They're all over the place right now in our industry, and import tariffs on battery storage is a big part of it. Batteries are really changing the grid here in the U.S. They can be used as baseload power for data centers, and tariffs are just getting in the way of development. And some argue that they would need to be at least 25% or more to really spur U.S. production. Trump considering adding national security tariffs on large-scale batteries under Section 232, which just layers in another bit of uncertainty in this whole ecosphere. Mike, your thoughts on it?
A company you might have heard of named Tesla. They recently flagged the impact of tariffs, noting its energy storage business is especially exposed because all of their battery cells procured are from China. The company reported a $400 million quarterly hit tied to tariffs. On top of this, many import restrictions put in place by the Biden administration to promote domestic manufacturing still apply. This week, Bloomberg reported another example. The Commerce Department set preliminary duties of 126% on solar imports from India, plus steep initial rates on imports from Indonesia and Laos. Still, solar stocks rose after the Supreme Court ruling, with investors appearing cautiously optimistic about potential tariff relief. Paul, our fourth story.
No, I've got so much to say, but since you let me blather, I'm going to keep chugging along. We do have a guest waiting for us. Story number 4 by Olivia Wang at Sightline Climate, titled Data Center Outlook, Half of 2026 Pipeline May Not Materialize. Say it ain't so, Mike Casey. Ghost projects in the queue? What?
Whoops. Wow announced 2026 capacity signals. Another year of explosive growth for data centers. Sightline Climate's market outlook suggests that 30 to 50% of that pipeline is unlikely to come online before the end of the year. They are tracking 190 gigawatts across 777 large data centers and AI factories announced since 2024. That includes at least 16 gigawatts slated to come online in 2026 across roughly 140 projects. Yet, only about 5 of the 16 gigawatts are currently under construction, with the rest showing no visible progress despite typical 12 to 18 month build timelines. Last year, 26% of the expected capacity was delayed. Another 10% of projects pushed back their commercial operation dates without much notice. Paul, your thoughts, friend?
I think that the co-location argument is getting hot and heavy, and I think that we're starting to lean toward a lot of these companies bringing their own power, and I think that that solves some problems, but it creates others. And some people that are way smarter than me are starting to sound the alarm on it. Tim Haid is one of those guys who was just on a podcast with Jigger Shaw talking a little bit about how the way to get these data centers online is connecting them to the grid and just figuring that part out. It's going to be messy, and you might not be able to be always on like you want. You might have to provide some resiliency solutions, but keeping all of this power off grid and then making redundant systems for these companies to run their compute operations is really not helping ratepayers, and it's creating a whole lot of other problems. While it is solving their problems and need for compute, it's creating a bunch more. I could talk about this till the cows come home, Mike, but I would love to get the guest on the horn and get to story number 5.
All right. For our last segment, we are joined by returning guest Beth Weise. She was one of the first people on this show way back when to talk about her original research in February 2024. It is now February 2026, and she is back with a big package. New USA Today project tracking county-level roadblocks to wind and solar development. Beth Weise, welcome back.
Always a pleasure, or a pleasure again. Though I am number 5 and not number 1. I don't know how I feel about that.
Top 5. All right. So we had you on the show to discuss NIMBYism toward U.S. solar and wind. And at that time, your reporting found 15% of U.S. counties had serious blocks to new projects. You have since updated that data for 24 and 25. Now 24% of U.S. counties have some sort of roadblocks. It's nearly 1 in 4 counties across the U.S. What were your big observations? I mean, this is a massive amount of reporting.
Yeah, 3 years. 3 years. What was I thinking? When we did this story in we have the data set from 2023, and then I was collecting for 2024, and then I said, and I kind of thought I knew where clean energy was going, and then, well, that all got blown up. And so we figured, let's see what happens in 2025. So now we've got a 3-year data set, and we've put all the data up, easily scrapable if anybody wants to play with it. And what struck me is the rapidity with which, and this is all county level. This is nothing that the feds are doing. This is not Trump. This is at the county level, people either putting outright bans or significant impediments or moratoria, and we've got moratoria that states or counties are putting in place that they call indefinite. Actually, when they call it indefinite, then we made it a ban. But it is significant. So we this time around we've got 6. Let's see. I'm looking at my numbers here. 3,142 counties in the United States. We didn't include DC because nobody's going to put up a turbine in DC. There are 755 counties where it's difficult, if not impossible, to build new wind, 645 difficult to impossible to build new wind, and 261 to build new solar. And those numbers are increasing, and solar is going through the roof, I think, because we just started building a lot of solar, and as soon as you start building it, people start banning it.
What sort of impediments are we talking about here? Is it everything from the typical unrealistic setbacks to noise concerns? Are we still worried about thermal runaway in some of these battery plants?
It's so, and I didn't track battery plants only because when we started in 2023, they were just not that big a deal. And I was like, and we didn't look at offshore wind because again, that kind of popped up, and I'm like, let's just keep the data set clean. It's fascinating if you look over time, the concerns that people have and how they get into the regulations shift over time. So if you look in the 2000s, yeah, everybody's terrified or they're concerned about that landfills are going to fill up or that the sound waves from the turbines are going to harm people or thermal runaway, as you say. By now, and a lot of counties still have those in place. And when they put in a new rule, those are still in there. But the big concerns that I heard, and I went to a lot of county commission meetings around the country to hear what people's concerns were. The biggest concerns now are that it destroys the viewscape. I mean, that's kind of always been there. The other big one, especially for agriculture, is that if you put up solar, you're taking land away that could be used to feed people, and therefore it is we're going to end up with no place to grow food anymore. Also, there's a lot of concern, and this came up mostly in the last year, of people in these meetings saying, why are we creating power here that isn't power that we're using? Like we're creating power and we're selling it to the big city. It's not staying here in our county. So I really did see the concerns that people were putting forward shifting. Oh, and also, what are we going to do with all the waste? Oh, and also the other one that I found quite interesting is that somehow rain on solar cells is going to dilute out the heavy metals that they're used to dope them, and it will destroy the water table.
Beth, if you could go back and add one more layer of data to expand the story still further, what would it be? Who funded local opposition, local election cycles, outside groups, litigation? If you had your pick, what would it be?
It wouldn't be funding, because I don't think it's an issue of funding. I think it's an issue of information. I think so. Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, I would love to be able to go in, and other people have done this, but to look nationally at like who's promoting these ideas, because clearly you see kind of one group take an idea that, all our ag land's going to go away, and then suddenly every negative group in the country, that's on the sheets that they're passing out when they walk into a county commission meeting. The interesting thing is, I just don't think it's that much money, because frankly, all you have to do is create a Facebook group, put the information up there, and people in the communities are very happy to take this up. And perhaps the biggest problem is when they bring these things up to county commissioners, the fact that most of them are untrue doesn't play a role in how people vote, because when they do vote for things, they get voted out of office the next election cycle.
We had Amy Harder on I think she's back with Axios now, and she, the breadcrumb that led from her reporting was over to American Petroleum Institute, where it is said that they have a firm under contract that does nothing except try to degrade the cultural positioning of renewable energy. Don't know if that's true, but she made a point that when she asked about that, they wouldn't really answer the question. Okay, question 2. When you've heard concerns like viewscape, property values, noise, etc., how often do you think those are literal technical concerns versus socially acceptable reasons that mask issues of like identity, distrust, or resentment of outsiders?
So, and again, I don't have solid data. This is anecdotal, but I actually don't think it's the outsiders who are bringing this. It's not the farmers. I mean, really, when you go to these meetings, I mean, you talk to people, typically the people who own land and make their money from creating something out of land are not the ones who are opposed. And it's often folks who have moved to the exurbs or rural areas specifically because they want to embrace a more rural lifestyle. When you talk to people, they're like, oh yeah, it's the 5-acre people with their ranch and they have chickens and they think they're a farmer. And I've got, 5,000 acres, and I am a rancher. And so it's the people who moved to areas relatively recently who want it to remain bucolic. Well, that means with cows, but beautiful and rural. And they're the ones who are showing up, and it's often not the people who live there, which is, the focus of this series, because last time around we looked at people who were opposed. This time we went to communities where they've embraced renewables to talk about what did it do in your community? What was the fallout? And it's been pretty good. And the most interesting one, and I had a fantastic time in Utah, in Juab County, where they put up solar, and that it is the reddest of red place. It is like full on, everybody voted for the Republicans in the presidential election, and yet they're all local. They've all been there a really long time. And they said, hey, this is going to help fund extra stuff for our schools. And this is important, and we all have to give a little bit to get a lot. And so that was interesting, that where you have a really cohesive community and a lot of trust and history, it went very well. It's more in places where you've got a lot of newcomers coming in.
Paul, we're about out of time. You get last question, or we go to Cleantecher of the week. Because I could talk to Beth all day about this.
Yeah, I would love to squeeze one more in if you don't mind. You talk about local governments in there, Beth, using rules that sound reasonable but function like bans. Are you seeing a lot of the same ordinance language, or does it change from place to place, depending on the narrative behind the reasoning for preventing some of these places from opening up shop?
There's some cut and paste. I didn't see a lot of it at the national level. What I would see is counties borrowing the next county over's language. Now, who's writing that original language is an interesting question that someone should look into.
ChatGPT, I find, writes everything nowadays.
That could well be. But it's often, you'll see like one county builds one project, people get up in arms, that county writes a new regulation so that nothing else can ever be built there. And then all the counties around them geographically suddenly start adopting that language. And so, counties do this all the time. They talk amongst themselves, and they say, hey, we wrote this great legislation, take it. And so I think that's more that's happening, but some of the boilerplate stuff does tend to show up in regulation after regulation.
All right, Paul Gerke, we got to go to our Cleantecher of the week.
Yeah, we ran long on this show, but it's because we let Beth talk. Not me rambling at the beginning. Let me be clear. All right, Cleantecher of the week. Let's get to it. It's Gonzalo Castro de la Mata, Executive Director at Earthna, who recently published an op-ed about how climate conversations right now are shifting from goals to implementation, focusing on energy security, finance, scalable solutions, especially as we approach surpassing that 1.5 degrees Celsius mark. He pushes for us to move faster on climate agreements and get into executing. Gonzalo Castro de la Mata, our Cleantecher of the week. Congratulations.
I suppose we have to thank our wonderful producer, Brian Mendez, and Alex Peterson and Claire Quirin for helping
Brian Mendez
gather
is over here tapping his
gather
watch.
these stories.
Get moving, fellas. Get off it. We passed 15 minutes 5 minutes ago.
Senator Gerke, just bring this to a wrap, my friend. Come on.
Beth Weise, thank you so much for joining us on This Week in Clean Tech. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe, leave some feedback, share story suggestions at the email we mentioned at the top of the show. You can read every article we discussed this week. They're in the links in the episode description and in the post on factorthis.com. Be good, people.
Thank you. Talk to you next week. Thank you, Beth.
Thanks.